Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's District Administration Web Seminar, A Superintendent's Vision and the Road to Seeing It Through, brought to you by the generous support of Navigate 360. Looking forward to a great discussion today and also live Q&A. Before we get underway, a few housekeeping items. For technical support, use the chat panel at the right of your screen. Select my name, Jason York, and type your message. If you're having any problems hearing at any time during the presentation, dial the phone number and access code, which we will post in the chat window at the right of the screen. To submit your question to our panel, use the Q&A panel at the bottom right of your screen. Send your question to all panelists. Don't see a panel? Click the expand panel triangle in front of the panel name. If you need access to the presentation at a later time, everyone who registered and attended today will receive links to the slides and an archived recording in an email later on. And with that, I'm going to turn it over now to JP Gilbo, CEO of Navigate 360, to start our program today. JP, it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you very much, Jason. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you are in the country. I hope today's seminar finds you all safe and healthy. My name is JP Gilbo. I'm CEO of Navigate 360. Navigate 360 is a company partnering with schools and their communities to really prevent, prepare for, and respond to crises that we encounter every day as part of educating and creating prosperous and healthy students. If today's pandemic has taught us anything, it's that we have a need to plan for and respond to just about anything. And in fact, we need leadership, we need vision, and we need inspiration to guide us through these things that we cannot see and have not encountered in the past. And today I'm happy to say that, we're going to introduce two individuals, Andrew Kim, who is the Superintendent of Comal ISD, and Joe McKenna, Executive Director of Safety and Student Support, two visionary leaders in the Comal ISD school district. And a little bit about the district: it's over 24,900 students, about 30 buildings, and 50 miles northeast of San Antonio, an area in the country that is wrestling every day with COVID-19 and what we're responding with. So you're going to hear a vision and how the organization is operationalizing this vision. And I look forward to the next 50 minutes of a great discussion and then Q&A. So with that, let me just kind of turn it over and ask Andrew a bit of a question. You started to formulate some guiding principles for how the district would respond to COVID and think about bringing children and the community back safely. Can you just talk about how you establish these principles and what they are?
Yes, JP, first of all, thank you so much, and thanks to the hosts here. We appreciate it very much for this opportunity. And thanks for everybody for listening in, and hopefully everybody's all safe and doing well. And I will tell you that we started by certainly our state of Texas, through the Texas Education Agency, has been developing, formulating various guidances for us to follow. And I think all of us may have their own individual states developing those. But what we really took an approach was to make sure that some of those languages that we can really think about the language of communication to our parents. We still didn't want to forget that, in some sense, how we communicate this very simply, very transparent, is something that we wanted to convey. So we didn't want to just create a new sense of vocabulary, new language that parents had to sort of bureaucratically figure out what are these things. So we were thoughtful about that. So while we are using the state guidelines, guiding principles, we want to make sure, as you can see by the screen, that we want it to be as simple and as self-explanatory as possible to our parents. Now, behind each one of these guiding principles, there are a lot of details, a lot of information that is for the group of principals, that is for teachers and for the public and parents. So we really thought about sort of the communication, the marketing, the information, because what we thought overarchingly that's going to be important is how do we communicate, how do we make sure that we're all aligned together, and how do we make sure this is very simple. So there's simplicity to the situation that we can all grab onto, because frankly, we're going to need to all participate together in this initiative, or else it's going to be very difficult to accomplish what we need to accomplish this school year. I think JP, you might need to unmute.
Sorry, thank you. Let's take the first one, back to normal. What does normal look like at Comal, and what are the elements that you're not going to budge on, or that you will, flex on?
Yeah, everything, of course, with some time, I guess, you could always go back and do a better job. Perhaps this could have been back to new normal. Certainly, I think we all agree that there is a new normal. But we did want to convey a sense of understanding to our parents, and because a lot of our parents, especially because of the experience that we all went through here in Texas and elsewhere, I'm sure, the last 10 or 11 weeks of the school year, last school year, was shut down, basically, with stay-at-home orders and so on. And at that time, the overwhelming responses and information that we got and attitudes that we got from our parents was that there's an expectation of whatever they might be, but we want to get back to some normal, desire to get back to a normal routine of things. So this is how we came up with the notion of our own local principle of back to normal. Now, back to normal means, unfortunately, there are new ways of doing that. And so what we want to do is make sure that there's the construct of parent choice, giving parents the option. And as a school system, we want to make sure that those options are available. And we want to make sure that we were able to provide on-campus or in-person options for those parents who would like to have that. But certainly options for parents, for whatever reason, decisions that, we're not judging on, that they can do remote learning opportunities, which will be a blended synchronous and asynchronous learning opportunities. And one of the big issues was about extracurricular and recess, frankly. Elementary parents wanting to see recess being available. So we made that very clear as a bullet point here, as well as certainly the cleaning process. So once again, it's a messaging point to our parents, an indication that, yes, we will also desire to get back to normal, but we're going to have to do it in a different way. And we have different options and choices for our parents to meet. Once again, that's a very strong sentiment in our community, and we want to provide that. We want to meet those expectations for our parents.
Andrea, let me just build on that a little bit as a question. You talked about it is a new normal, and it feels like there's a bit of a shift even that's taking place in education in response to this new normal. And it sounds like, parents are going to be playing a bigger role in the way in which education is going to be delivered from the district. And how are they responding to that? What are you seeing, and how are you having to adjust?
Yeah, I think certainly we all, have very astute parents who are seeing that, the future is going to look different. It's almost like, we've let all of our parents look what's behind door number 3, that we never, let parents look behind, or curtain number 3, if you will, right? We've always talked about what's behind door number 3, but we never ventured into it as fully. And, of course, with this COVID-19 situation, we were all forced to interact in that regard. And I think that as an organization, as a system, what we're trying to do also, JP, to your point, trying to make sure that we parlay that what we do now, while we believe is temporary, but what we create as a system, as a process, ought to be sustainable for the future. That really does benefit parents, kids, and teachers. And that's about personalization, which we have talked about in education for some time now. We talked about customization, We talked about using integration of technology. Well, we're doing it. We're all doing it to some level, whether it's good or bad. And I think it is time that almost in some sense, from an education, person who's leading a school district, a small part of me is looking at this whole context as a research and development opportunity in many ways. That we really ought to make sure that whatever we do, we ought to put a lot of thoughts into it to make sure that we can sustain it beyond when this COVID-19 situation is over at some point. And I hope that to be over soon. So I think we need to be thoughtful about strategic thinking, not just an immediate reaction to the day-by-day situation that we're dealing with.
Great, thank you. Joe, let me ask you, you have to operationalize the vision and the safety here for students and for staff. How are you doing that? As things flex and as they change, and you start to think about everything from arrival to dismissal to social distancing, how are you doing that?
Yeah, and I think kind of working off Andrew's point, I mean, there's certainly a vision to, sticking with this guiding principle to get things back to normal. But I think, as Andrew pointed out, one of the key things is a new normal, right? So we can still do arrival dismissal. We can still do lunch, right? We can still do those things that we have typically done in school. They're just going to look different in terms of creating distance or a different schedule or, more hand sanitizer. We just have to put these other layers. We're layering our health and safety protocols on top of these practices that we've done for forever in education. We're just having to come up with different ways to do them. And I think that's, some people understand that, but that's hard for some people because again, it's different, it's change. But I think, again, with Andrew's leadership, just kind of understanding that we want to give the opportunity to come back to school in person on campus if that's what parents choose in this situation. So I think, certainly I think part of my job is to make sure that we can deliver these same activities in a way that's healthy and safe for our kids.
And JP, if I may, I think that to all these problems that we're now seeing, almost like the first time, as if like school never existed. And, things that we have taken for granted, now we're trying to solve. And in many cases, we're trying to solve with information that we have or information we don't have, and knowledge base and expertise we don't have. And I think that when we think about the long-term effects of this is one of the reasons why I think we've been very fortunate to involve, such as yourself, as a thought partner in this regard, and to be really a problem-solving partner in terms of how we will go forward with it. I will admit to everyone publicly here that we don't have all the expertise about how LMSs work, how technology devices work, how communication through all these multimedia resources work. As educators, we know about reading, we know about numeracy, we know about phonics, sure, but how do we now understand that work? And I think right now it's important for us to really identify those who are willing to work with us to problem solve. And this is where I think thought partners such as yourself, we've been very fortunate to work with you in that regard, to really problem solve together. And it's really not about purchasing necessarily a product, even though that will be the case, but really about thinking about this together. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity right now that we ought to really, really think about.
Yeah, terrific points. And I was going to ask you to expand on those things that you were taking for granted or that we all take for granted every day. And you did a great job at just highlighting some of them that we're all encountering. Let's move on to ownership of wellness. For the school district, we all have personal responsibility, individuals and the district. And there's going to be responsibility that's shared for certain things. Can you talk about those responsibilities and what are some of the particular challenges that you've seen or encountered thus far, and how have you gotten around them?
Yeah, JP, I'll take that one. I mean, ownership of wellness, I think, is a big one for us, right? And so we know, not only just based on the guidance, but really just based on common sense that to get everyone back into school, it's going to take everyone to do their piece. And, certainly, again, that goes back to my last point about things being different, right? So when you come to school, we're going to have a screener where you're going to have to attest to your health, and maybe not so much as some type of formal process, but more just another check, right? It makes you think twice before you come in, about, how you're feeling that day. And, again, Andrew spoke a little bit to the cleaning process. Sure, our custodians are, they're going to work as hard as they can, and they're going to clean and sanitize spaces. But, unfortunately, we're going to have to all pick up our part in that, in terms of teachers, students wiping down their materials, administrators jumping in, which, they do to some degree already in the cafeteria and so forth. But that's going to be really important because, again, it's about mitigating the potential risk of this virus spreading. So I think, again, change more stuff. We know that our teachers and our principals are busy. They've got a lot going on. They've got a lot to do. And this is just another layer on top of that. But we know that if again, educators want kids in the building, they know that that's where they can do their best work. These are the things that need to happen. And I think, we're seeing, at least our principals back this week, really starting to take some ownership of that. But it's really everyone's going to do their piece.
JP, I got to tell you, there's not enough thermometers. There's not enough, lawyers to, reconcile privacy issues. Maybe there are enough lawyers. Who knows? There's not enough, different things that are out there. There's not enough custodians out there. We're going to all have to take some ownership of this. And, we all have to participate. We can't just leave it up to our custodial staff to clean the building, to get ready. So that's a whole dynamic change in terms of this. And I think the challenges that right now that we're facing is really finding capable people to do some of this stuff, as well as really the positive peer pressure, if you will, for people to really get themselves involved, like the face covering issue. To be quite honest, I think the face covering is the elephant in the room. Unfortunately, it's been hijacked for all sorts of reasons, I think, and judgments. And what we're trying to simply say is that we're going to need to all take care of that and own that if we want to make sure our teachers are healthy, our students are healthy, and we want to have the goal of having consecutive school days available to us without disruption of stop and go. Then I think, once again, we need to all get involved in this. We have to all fight this horrible disease together. And that's our big message with ownership of wellness there, that it's unfortunately not left up to one individual or one group or a counselor or a nurse. We're going to have to all take care of this.
Yeah. Let me ask a bit of a different question here around wellness, because we're talking about kind of hygiene and physical wellness. Let me ask a question about mental wellness. We're coming up, first of all, this pandemic on kids as with adults is a societal stressor. There's no doubt. It's changed our lives. It's refined how we work and play and who we interact with. And in some ways it's become isolating for people. We also know that, there's going to be people impacted that have seen their parents or their relatives get sick or even pass away. So there will be family issues. There will be loss of jobs that are happening within families. And even more so, we're coming up on an election period that, will create, even more division versus unity together. And we know from school studies that, the shape and form of bullying changes, the name calling and teasing changes around some of these ideological events. How are you preparing for that in terms of wellness, especially when part of the school's population will be remote?
Yeah, truthfully, I don't have a good answer for that. I just, I think that right now that, we are getting similar, if not exact, questions from our local community members, parents, students, teachers, everyone, and we're also asking ourselves those exact questions, JP. I think right now we're just being extremely transparent and honest about the fact that, once again, these are issues that have been, I think, percolating for some time, but this COVID-19 has really, unmasked all these hosts of issues that we're all dealing with. And, the balancing between mental wellness and remote learning or stay-at-home situation to on-campus and the community spread, these are all sort of competing friction issues that are going head-to-head against it and not dovetailing with each other to be able for us to be able to work in unison in some regards. So trying to do all of these things as an individual thing with all these barriers of contact, barriers of communication, of distance, has been a tremendous challenge to that. And I think the easy answer could be, well, we need more staff, we need more counselors, we need more of those. Yeah, but that goes into a whole notion of funding issues and school funding, which I'm sure is a whole different 2-hour discussion or maybe a 14-hour discussion about that. So how do we make this thing work? I got to tell you, I'm going to just pivot back once again to the fact that some thought partnership in terms of what we need to do. I think that we could probably win on some areas with using technology, some software to get a better handle on just-in-time focus, attention, and response. And I think that's very important because, prior to all of this, the response at which we communicated out to a certain situation, whether it's a struggling student or potentially a parent, that took some time to get to our level for us to react to it. So I think some level of, response and how do we efficiently get to where we need to get to, and resources, I think, are going to be extremely important there because the resources are limited. And I do think that we need to, accumulate the right types of responses. And I know reading in a lot of what hospitals are doing right now with telemedicine, I think there might be an opportunity there to really coincide with that, to really provide, right there, just-in-time initial response, even though it may not be a physical response right off the bat. I think that's something we could do, perhaps, and we're still combating the social media bullying. I mean, Snapchat and FaceChat and those things never went away during this time period. And I think we have to be attuned with that. And so how do we, educate parents? How do we educate kids to really think about those and really educate them to filter those information out? And I think we need more data set about some of the ill effects that you're talking about and really publish that out there, just like almost like a campaign against, perhaps other, issues that we've dealt with in our history of the United States, whether it's about cigarette smoking as a young age student or underage drinking issues. I think we're going to need to really do some, campaign talking about those things as we go forward here, more so than ever before now, I think.
Yeah, Andrew, thank you for the transparency and honesty. I think where I started at the start of this, it does demonstrate how flexible we're going to need to be and how open we're going to need to be and really how connected we're going to need to be to each other to solve problems as they come up and come up real time. Joe, where do you turn to in terms of student support and really being able to support? What is that network you're using today? And who do you turn to support new ideas or bring new ideas in?
Yeah, so we have, we're lucky to have a student support team that has some really great folks, and they work closely with all our campus counselors. So we have a group of social workers that supplement that and kind of work with our kids who need some additional support. A couple things to Andrew's point. So once this started happening in March and we knew we were going to be closed, I mean, there were certain counselors, naturally our social workers had certain kids that they, were concerned about and that they wanted to reach out to and make sure that they, at first it was basic needs. It was food. It was, that kind of stuff, just making sure that they were well taken care of. And I would say much quicker than I thought. some of our private providers that we work with here kind of in the area, as Andrew said, pivoted to technology, to doing telehealth, counseling sessions to stay in contact with some of those kids. There was barriers to that. My consent form didn't have telehealth in it as a personal provider, so I had to maybe go push out a new form to get those kids to sign it, but I can't just show up to the school to go get that form signed because they're not at school. So there were barriers to it, but they did get it set up. There were some community partners that we worked with who were able to drop meals off on the front porch, kind of no contact. So to Andrew's point, there were competing priorities. We wanted to see kids. We wanted to make sure kids were doing well. But the idea of social distancing and not having contact is kind of contrary to that. So we're looking to take some of those practices into this school year. So some of the things that our student support team is working on is making sure that even for our remote kids, that they have a connection to be able to Zoom in or whatever platform and talk with a counselor or talk with a social worker should they need that. Making sure that our kids are on campus who have counseling sessions during the day, that we have a dedicated room where they can get on and do telehealth with that provider. So we're trying to, again, to Andrew's point, use technology where we can to facilitate some of those same things that we've always been doing. But our team is really, I think, looking at scaling what we've always done to perhaps take in some more students that needed additional support based on kind of this situation.
JP, I got to tell you, prior to COVID-19 or spring break, essentially last school year spring break, we were always curating great lessons or learnings from various places that we would send our folks to, conferences, right? We were engaged with the group of folks at, for example, Angela Duckworth's work in University of Pennsylvania, Wharton School, for example. So, and we had a schedule. Well, all those things have been upended pretty much, right? I mean, we're not traveling anywhere anymore. So now we've kind of all pivoted to sort of virtual conferences. And I think those have been fine to some degree, but I think focusing in virtual conferences is going to be a challenge. And then as a result of that, I think sometimes when we get together at conferences or at various conferences, the interaction, the networking is so much powerful. And not having that opportunity to do so, to really evolve, moving forward as a school district to learn new set of information, new set of skill sets, especially when it comes to this whole world of mental illness and mental health, I think it's going to be a challenge. And that's why I think, let me just pivot it back to this notion of having, thought partners that are engaged with you on a regular basis, that are living with you essentially, remotely, to talk about these issues. And we're going to all need to have that. I think the sort of this, we don't want to just listen to asynchronous videos and then try to figure out what to do thereafter. I think we all learn because of the dialect, the discussions, the debates, scenarios that we could all talk about. And really missing that has been really, I think, isolating from a learner's perspective, as an educator. So how do I keep on improving upon my learning level? Well, I need a dialogue. I need a feedback. I need somebody to push me, argue with me, disagree with me. And right now, that's something we can do, obviously, within our district, but to go outside to get other expertise, that's going to be a new, brand new challenge, I think, if we don't have conferences in the future or the limited conferences in the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Reflecting on just running a company today from, really hundreds of miles away and hundreds of employees that are all individually in their home, and someone that goes to conferences himself. I think, one of the things I know is that, we are creatures of habit, and a conference often lets our mind shift to openness and creativity and taking in information. And when we're back in our work, it's more operational and execution. And I think these are going to be changes that are going to be important for us to lead through and help people in terms of adapting their patterns of behavior and their patterns of mindfulness to keep new ideas coming and to spur some innovation as we go through this change. But with that, let me move on to the next slide, which obviously we're going to have to respond to cases of where issues arise around COVID and within our communities or buildings. Talk about the shifts in mindset that you're looking for here as it relates to responses to cases.
Yeah, first, I just want to make sure that, we were very clear. So we think that all throughout the year, we will have to respond to cases. Once again, we want to make sure that it's like, hey, here it is. And I think when it comes to this has taken a lot of work because, once again, we appreciate your partnership with this, JP, because this notion, people want to know I think we all agree that we're going to have cases. And so then how we're going to respond to that, and if we're going to create a level of confidence and conference of trust of how we're going to manage this, if we don't have this down to some level of detail, then I think that, then it'll be very difficult for people to engage with. So this is a big area. So we've divided into 3 areas: case management, communication, and overly communicating, by the way, and then how do we respond to facility cleanliness. So Joe has spent a lot of time with this team, certainly we have with the public, describing these things, and I think that's very important. I'm going to have Joe kind of talk about case management and communication perhaps.
Yeah, so we started this early on, maybe earlier than most, just because, as Andrew had said when we started this conversation, we needed to see, at least for the length of this COVID time, that we needed to start a process to make sure that it was going to be sustainable. So once we realized we were going to be able to have some summer programs like strength and conditioning, some other programs that we were able to have under the guidelines, we wanted to get a process in place to say, okay, how are we going to manage the implementation really of the state guidelines of tracking positive cases on our building, mitigating the spread to anyone else. So we did that pretty quickly. We have an RN that's kind of overseeing that process for us and helping us do some loose version of contact tracing. When we do get a positive case, looking at the cohorts that we've set up and who might be impacted, communicating that out, as Andrew said, is the biggest piece because people want to be informed. People want to be able to make informed decisions. So we're able to get that information out. And then what needs to follow quickly, certainly, is we need to identify the area that person was potentially in our building, again, to get a crew out there and make sure that area is not only clean like it is every night, but perhaps with a little bit more attention to make sure that, again, when that area can be put back into use, that it is safe to do so. So this process, again, it's really the implementation of the state guidelines where we're tracking confirmed exposure to those that have been confirmed as well as those experiencing symptoms, and we're implementing that, and we're developing, a process to say, here's the earliest you can come back unless, you see your doctor and we get some note before that. We're making sure that the people that are, again, in our building are safe, and this is part of that process.
JP, without a very clear, identified, communicated, publicized, marketed case management process and communication process, we're basically defaulting to social media and face chat and TikTok to be how we communicate about those issues. And what we wanted to extremely avoid is sort of the rumor mill, the tattletelling, the just constant barrage of so-and-so has it, so-and-so has it, so-and-so has this, and so on and so on. We didn't want that to become the overriding way that parents are finding things out. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm just realistic, understand that that's happening. But we want to make sure, and we want to educate our parents that this is the official information, and we're really asking our parents to really work with us, cooperate with us about information, and to really understand that we will communicate appropriately, officially, to let people know. Once again, our goal is to, one, bring about a level of confidence in our system.
And trust.
And trust. And so as a result of that, we've had to add in a district-wide or district case management manager, and we're asking all of our campuses to identify now a campus COVID-19 case manager. typically will be an RN or an assistant principal or a principal that would coincide and work with it to make sure that they're doing that thing and following through on these. It's really another job category temporarily until this virus is over, but we hope soon. And I think those are the things that we're going to have to do as a system to really respond to these in an efficient way. If not, I think that once again, what will prevail is the rumor mill, which is always going to be there anyway, but we want to make sure that we establish an official line of communication with everybody.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit, so that's interesting, having a district case manager and someone localized, and then just even some of the protocols that you're putting in place. How are you training this? Like, how are you informing and educating the staff as you go into this school year?
Yeah, and I think one of the things, again, starting this early has allowed us to, there are some trainings out there online about, contact tracing, and, there's some universities that have some courses. So certainly we're trying to get in those and just educate ourselves. But really, I mean, it's been somewhat organic, right? It's taken the guidance that was given to us and really just developing the implementation of it, right? Because the guidance alone doesn't tell you how to do it. It just tells you, you have to track these cases and these people have to be out for X amount of days, but it doesn't tell you how to do that. So, I will say, does it look today how it looked on day one when we launched that process? No, it doesn't. We've gotten better at it, and we've set up some communication channels between departments within our school district that need to have specific information. So we've automated the piece where when we have a case, we have an automatic way of notifying facilities that there's a place that they need to get a team out to. It's not chasing people around the building, which we were doing day one. It's letting our communications department know that some message has to go out to this group of parents or this group of students. We've really kind of tried to refine that, and I think we'll continue to refine that as we bring folks back to campus. But it really is the how to do this stuff, and really, again, it goes back to, if we do this right, we can mitigate to some degree the spread of the virus and keep our students and staff healthy and safe.
JP, we're now in the world of customer service business. So, once again, really identifying people with that set of skill sets. And we also even created a help desk, a call center, because what we want to do was also unburden our campuses from having to address every one of these questions that are coming there. We didn't want 30 school variation of an answer. Rather, we want to make sure that there is a uniformity in terms of how we answer that. So we've really what we call sort of quality adjustment, I guess, rather than just a number of folks' variation of answers. So we want to make sure that, we keep that tight in terms of what we do. So we've had to keep on training up our call center folks, our help desk folks here at Central Office, and we really are working with our campus principals, certainly the campus COVID-19 case manager, to really just-in-time work, letting them know what the responses ought to be, communication ought to be, the processes that are involved in this whole process, this whole work of case management. And so that's it's been setting that up has been not as difficult, but I think the issue of, what we're going to anticipate is the overwhelming numbers of issues that are coming, they're going to start when school starts here in Texas. And I think it's going to be a challenge for us that we anticipate.
Yep, you know what, and great idea on the call center to have a single unified point of view and answer. And I know part of what you've also put in place is really a parent center for communication, and we can talk about that, next. I think, we know that content and context is important for communication, and if we're not communicating, someone is communicating something for us. So can you just talk a bit about how you're using the Communication and Information Center and how it's helping reduce the fears and anxiety for people moving forward as you go into the year?
Yeah. I think once again, you hit it on the nail there, JP. We want to make sure that we have a centralized way Because you got to understand, human nature is such that, 30 principals, 30 folks, 30 nurses at each of the campuses, they might all have different variation of some of these answers. So while that will still go on, obviously, I'm not, unreal naive about that. But we want to make sure that we have a centralized place that our parents can go to get information. So the biggest banner there is FAQ. We've been curating all sorts of questions. Some are simple, some are very complex. So twice a week, we've been updating our FAQs to make sure that parents understand that. So every time we listen to parents, we are, having a district-wide answer. Every time we see a question that comes through our call center, we're curating those things and then turning them into FAQs. Because if there's one question out there, there are probably 10 people with the same one question. So we didn't want to waste time answering it 10 different ways. We want to answer it one way. And then we're also marketing this Canal Parent Center. JP, we're also excited that we also put some podcasts out there. So I hope that, you can listen to that. It'll be available on iTunes here soon. But, there's several episodes that we're putting up.
And I thought you weren't into technology. I mean, come on. That's
great. The podcast is where we're actually sharing with our parents our thinking while we're making decisions. So it's not that the podcast is about, here's a decision, here's what we're going to do. It's really about us serving as a model of parents out there struggling through the same questions that everybody else is going through. So it's almost like a little insight into how we are making the decisions that eventually comes about. So and we try to incorporate the various questions and thoughts that parents are having just as well, and we're injecting into that podcast to get out. So our parents who listen to those are getting a sense of, oh, gosh, the superintendent over there understands what we're going through right now. So that's been a big win. Another win is that they're understanding why we're making the decisions why we're making. While they may disagree, they're understanding the whys, if that makes sense. And then we also have some Canal Live, which is our video vignettes that we're creating, that we're going to add on to, that shows how to do something, how to do this. Once again, we got to make things simple. We got to make things visual. And so we're fast producing as many, video vignettes as possible about the things that we're doing out there. It's taking an enormous amount of energy and time, and I just want everybody to understand, JP, that we don't have a huge staff. Literally, I have one communications director, one person that's in charge of sort of graphics, one person in charge of all jack of trades, and really between the 3 or 4 of them and myself and Joe, we're all doing this right now. So it's not like we have a staff of 25 or 30 in our communications department at all. That's not the case.
Can you maybe talk a bit about, Andrew? I mean, I have my oldest son, I think I mentioned this to you, is graduating to become a teacher, and my mother's a nurse. So I have a great appreciation for really all of you and everybody that's working so hard as just individuals without a whole team. I mean, collectively you've become a team, but doing great work. Could you just talk a little bit about, those questions you're getting from parents? Because I think everybody that might be listening to this webinar or seminar are getting the same questions in their schools, like, does my child have to wear a mask? If so, why? Am I supposed to send my child to school, or is it better if I keep them home? I think they're turning to schools for an answer because they don't know. And so how are you answering those questions for them, or how are you helping them get to decisions?
Yeah, so I think you hit on some of the proverbial questions that are out there, but we're also getting a set of questions from teachers, right? So teachers have a set of questions for their own needs, parents, and we have sort of 2 types of parents, the remote parent and the on-campus parent. And then, so we have all sorts of variety of questions that are coming in. I will tell you that I'm answering all of these questions from a perspective of a parent, of a dad. I have 3 kids of my own in the district. So I'm answering it from a dad's perspective, a parent perspective, not necessarily a superintendent perspective, because I think there's really not a right answer to all of this right now. And so I'm really acknowledging their situation. I'm acknowledging their fears. They're acknowledging their sort of non-commonsensical questions like, how do I eat with a mask on, for example? You know what I mean? So it's like, well, you probably need to take your mask off when you eat, you know, that kind of stuff, right? I mean, it's a variety of questions. It's almost like this COVID-19 has really put a pause in life, and we don't know what to do. And so I think, once again, being really empathetic and really understanding about where everybody's at has been very important. And I think it's important to be consistent about what we say over and over and over and over again. So while we may have, JP, about 200 or so questions that we have curated for our FAQ, we're only releasing these on a certain amount that we can combine so that we are very thoughtful about simplifying the answers. And so we want to be consistent about how we answer these things over and over again. We don't want to show a lot of variation. There's already enough variation among the news agencies and, you know, all the different things that are on the nightly shows and whatnot and social media. So we don't want to contribute any more to that. So I think that's been a very powerful thing that we've done. And I think it's been very incumbent upon us to really be thoughtful about, you know, just creating processes. So it's not necessarily answers, but here's how we're going to do it. So a lot of questions like we just mentioned about disciplinary issues about masks. So we've had those questions like, are you going to discipline some students, send them home or send them to remote learning if they're not going to wear a mask? Obviously, the easy answer is yes. I think that's harder to do in some cases. So I think what we talked about as a process to some of our teachers that I've talked to recently is that I would like to have administrators communicate and conference with our parents, obviously talk with them about the whys and why we need the mask on, or the face coverings, I should say, and then down the road perhaps make a decision about that child in terms of advocating that child to maybe be a remote student. So I think, once again, explain that process of what we're going to do to parents has been somewhat, I think, beneficial. Because once again, I think each one of these individuals are going to be different. They're going to be, they're going to have a lot of different legalese perhaps involved in it. And to be sort of arbitrarily this or that, I think right now, I think is not maybe the way to approach it. Or that's not how we're approaching it here in the Comal School District.
Great. What, you know, on this topic of just kind of masks and social distancing in general, as you kind of reopen schools, what do the arts programs like band and choir look like? How are you thinking about those as the fall rolls around?
Yeah, this is going to be a very interesting season for extracurricular activities. You know, in Texas, those are let me just say it: football is king, and so not to have a football season.
I purposely left out sports.
Yeah, but to not have extracurriculars like that is almost sacrilege down here. So, in fact, as we were talking, JP, our state of Texas, that the body that governs athletics, as well as extracurriculars and fine arts like marching band, just released some guidance just now. So we're going to have to interpret that. In some cases, it's prohibited by health county orders by the county health officials. So we have sort of variations going on right now. I think in some cases, some school districts have decided to prohibit some of those activities. In some cases, some districts are moving forward with it. So it's kind of right now, there is a lot of variation when it comes to providing extracurricular activities. I will tell you that generally parents are wanting extracurricular activities. Of course, they want it safe. So I think right now the inconsistency that is out there is going to be a big challenge in terms of how we go about taking care of this. So I got to tell you, it's still right now, it's something that is up in the air that we're trying to work through. So if somebody has great advice on that, we certainly will listen to it.
Yeah, and Joe or Andrew, if maybe you could just talk about one other question that came in, is what advice are you giving to staff members who are at high risk of COVID or COVID-related issues?
Yeah, this is a question that's been coming up. First I want, everyone that's listening to understand that all school districts, I think all school districts definitely care about their employees, are thinking about this. Certainly we are. We also are very thoughtful about each individual's situations, health concerns, even their family members as well too. So, but at the same time, we have to follow sort of HR sort of laws that's established about HIPAA, about privacy, and those information that's out there in the HR world. And so once again, we're developing a process that our teachers can interact with to look at their situations and to be able to utilize the menu of options that they have as an employee, just like any other employee would do, to be able to accommodate their situation. And it's going to have
Sorry to interrupt. I was going to ask you, do you foresee them teaching remote? Would that be one of the options?
For me, the way we're approaching that is I can't just have all the teachers be remote if we have a good number of kids coming on campus. So what we're doing right now is a sort of a stair-step situation. So the first step has been to really ask our parents to kind of let us know, are they thinking about remote versus on campus? So we have a percentage by campus, by grade level that we can identify. I think once we understand that and where things are at, certainly we want to go ahead and potentially identify teachers for remote learning opportunities versus on-campus opportunities. And I will tell you, JP, that determination, in my opinion, will be based upon skill sets, from learning skill sets, teaching skill sets of that teacher or group of teachers. And once again, I really ought not to discriminate based upon any privacy issues of a teacher to determine whether or not they're going to be doing this or that type of platform of learning. So once again, we are really encouraging our teachers in Cornell Independent School District to, let's make sure that our skill sets are all relative to what we need to do from a remote learning situation so that we can all potentially participate in that as an applicant pool towards that effort. So I think that's very important to distinguish and talk about. That is not to discount or diminish our concern and care for our employees. So once again, I think we have a legal obligation just as well that we got to take care of. But at the same time, how do we make sure we, take care of our employees from as a caring organization? And that's competing with each other in many ways at this time. So I think that's something to really be thoughtful about. But certainly for teachers who are here with us on campus, we have amassed all sorts of PPE equipment, even plexiglass, which is really, we've acquired quite a bit of that. We've acquired face shields, goggles, masks, gaiters, gloves. So we have quite a few that we will be available to our teachers for free of charge, as well as our kids, free of charge. Of course, they can bring their own personalized equipment if they would like, but certainly we're making that work. And we've been on this for some time now as a school district, working on this issue.
Great. All right, let me remind the participants in the seminar, the chat window and the Q&A window are available to ask questions. We'll take questions now. I'll let you type some in. While they're doing that, what I'd really like to ask both of you in just kind of a short answer, for each of you, what's the one pleasant surprise out of all of this that this has brought about?
Yeah, I can take that one first. Maybe this is tooting our own horn a little bit, but man, how we came together as a group here pretty quick to really make some really quick decisions. It's in the somewhat bureaucratic world of education on a day-to-day basis, things are somewhat slow. But really since March, we have made some really quick decisions and been able to implement some things that, Andrew said it in some of our meetings, that may have taken months or years to implement. So I think and that doesn't just, speak to the folks in this building, it's our principals, it's, it's our parents, it's our community. There are community organizations that stepped up. So I think that if anything good has come out of this is really some of those relationships that have just allowed us to do so much in a short amount of time. And there's still so much more to do, but I do think that certainly has been a benefit, if you can use that word, in the situation.
I think to Joel's our sense of teamwork, in terms of making sure that the networks of teams that we have created and using the powers of that network of teams, whether it's a fourth grade team, a team of elementary principals, the team that I work with on a day-to-day basis. To that, JP, we borrow some techniques from your industry, like Agile, Scrum, different techniques of that in the software engineering world, as well as so those are things that we have applied in terms of how we are operating. So I guess our sense of coordination, communication within the organization has really improved to some level. And I think that's been a great benefit. I think the other benefit is that we're really taking stock of all the things that we took for granted, and really now appreciating the fact that we are completely missing those things. And I think there is a genuine yearning for those to be able to be provided back to our kids, our teachers, and all of us. And so I think that sense of understanding about that. So I hope that we don't take it for granted when we do come back to some level of normalcy. So I think that's been good to really realize all the blessings that we have, that we used to have in many ways.
I think just two questions that came in real quick at the end there. How do you see using plexiglass? You mentioned you're going to use plexiglass. So someone asked, how do you plan to use it?
Well, one, we started acquiring plexiglass I would say around April. And part of that was because we need to do assessments for special ed students, dyslexic students, individualized testing. And so we've been creating sort of this makeshift or plexiglass sort of thing that, so that our special ed folks as well as our other assessment individuals could do that to provide support for individual students. And then, of course, I think that we can certainly provide some of these in the classroom for small group interactions. I think if you have a lot of teachers who are listening to this, I think they understand what a kidney table is. And typically, you will have, 4 or 5 kids to that kidney table, or kidney bean table, I guess. And so, dividing that table up into with plexiglass, kind of making it work that way. So we're making it available. So we think that teachers will utilize some of this stuff. Now, I got to tell you, we don't have enough. So we're trying to still acquire them. Of course, we have to sort of do a quick construction of these things here. So we're working on those things as fast as possible with the plexiglass. And we also found, JP, a vendor that's created a clear mask, or it's got a clear sort of see-through, unfortunately, the face covering. So we've acquired a bunch of those. So we have teachers who teach, for example, American Sign Language. And so to our deaf and hearing impaired students, we want to make sure that teachers who are teaching that class, as well as students, so those are available, because obviously reading lips is going to be very important in that situation. So I think that's something we required as well too.
Got it. And Joe, maybe you can answer, like, who's doing the cleaning in classrooms? Is it custodians or an outside group?
So we're having everyone participate in that. We've come up with a cleaning process where teachers have a solution that they're each able to spray on surfaces. It dries in 5 minutes. Certainly our custodians will be in every night, and then we do have a third-party contractor that will come in a couple times a year to do a really deep clean and put a kind of a microfiber kind of coating on, an antimicrobial microfiber on some of our surfaces. So it's multi-layered in terms of that cleaning approach.
Yeah. Well, look, we're at the top of the hour. I want to say thank you, Andrew and Joe, for sharing all your insights and both what you know and what you don't know. I think we've learned through this. There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of moving swiftly and being flexible that will continue to be needed, and you're leading the way in that. And I appreciate your time. And to all the participants, thank you for joining us today. And I will turn it back to Jason.
All right, thank you, JP. Thank you, Andrew and Joe, too, for your time and expertise as we talk through all this. A lot of great takeaways here, a lot of things that you guys are working on. District administration is the leader in editorial coverage for this type of news, trends, and current issues in K-12 management. Subscribe for free to our print magazine, digital edition, email newsletters, and web seminars like the one you heard here today. On behalf of District Administration, thank you for joining us. Remember, the archive recording of this webinar will be available for you to review and share with other members of your team at the link below, and you will also receive an email link to the slides. So this is Jason York on behalf of District Administration. Thank you for participating today. Have a great day.